Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different. Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different, man. Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different, man. White Bay. Trash.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio, I have a visual artist that has done a lot in visual art across the nation in other places as well. And also, she is a person that comes back to Detroit every year and offers so much more of a potluck style of an artistry offering with the Talking Dog guys. And it's been some years, and you can imagine an immersive experience. It's music, it's healing like yoga, meditation. It is a whole lot of paint, because if you go, you're probably going to see her covered in paint, because that's what visual artists do. And also the very first person to come into studio with a canine. Now look, don't make no consistency of this, as much as I'm all for the four-legged friends.
I'm sorry.
Unless they gonna open up and start talking.
They might.
Get it going. With that being said, Konstance, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, definitely.
With my four-legged friends.
With your four-legged friends. What's going on? Who is that?
This is Artemis on my lap.
Artemis.
Yeah, it's her
What's
birthday.
going on? You chilling, Artemis?
She's chilling. They're my service animals. They don't do nothing.
Okay.
They're pillows.
All right. Well, there we go. Kick it. Kick it old school.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So these always start with like backstories and the roots and origins.
Mm-hmm.
What's the roots to the D? What brought your peoples this way?
So, I grew up in Detroit proper. I come from Michigan, from the Great Lakes. I'm native. I'm part of a couple of tribes. My bloodline is. My folks came from the South. They came from the Carolinas, Virginia, New Orleans. I'm just finding out like this new thread is my great grandfather.
Okay.
My grandfather actually, on my dad's mother's side. So, yeah, but we've been in Michigan for generations, and yeah, I was over on the west side mostly, but we moved around the city a bunch.
So let's talk about Carolinas. Where about Carolinas did they come up from?
I don't even know yet. That's like one of those threads that
you're still getting the pieces.
Yeah, I'm still getting the pieces. Like, I'm like lightly middle aged now.
Hilarious.
Lightly. I'm in there, but lightly just got there, and it's one of those things that kind of is unfolding, and I'm trying to figure out, some of those stories, because I literally didn't even know that we had roots in New Orleans at all until I was there last year visiting. And then I called my dad, who's like a sage. He's like, oh, my daddy was from there. And I'm like, I don't know that. Like, that's one of those, family members that kind of drop off, and he's like, you don't really know. It's like a couple stories. So I'm interested to know as well. But my grandmother told me Virginia. So
VA.
I have like some names though. I'm like, oh, there's like Ola, Chloe. So I think that there'll be a trip in order to go and figure out, who my cousins are down there.
Okay.
For that part. So, but it's so I have part family that's from Florida as well, and then they came up through Pennsylvania.
Okay.
They were in Pittsburgh, and then they came to Detroit.
So from Pittsburgh to Detroit, of the ones that you follow.
Of that I'm close with.
Yeah.
And then they came to Detroit, and then everyone went to LA on that side.
Okay.
We're the Detroit cousins.
Okay. So the Detroit cousins. Pittsburgh to Detroit. And what side of town? You said west side-ish, but what neighborhood do you remember most being like where family was before they went to LA?
Oh, well, that was generations ago.
Oh, okay.
That was literally like my granddaddy was being bad and stayed.
Okay.
I don't know. I just was like running numbers. There was a print shop.
Okay.
They were farmers in Compton. So they're still in Compton and Inglewood. But they're entrepreneurs, so but I think they just hated the weather. They said Detroit's too cold. So they out there, but it's really crazy because my cousins out there, we didn't know much about each other, but like I remember we were in a car and then my cousin Dana put on Georgia Muldrow and I was like, oh my God, I know her through, Detroit music. And so there's still like these similarities in the things that we're into, the things we drink, the things we eat.
So it's some ties. So
yeah, it's fascinating. She was telling me about another cousin that she was with and something else happened.
We going too far. Let's go instead of
pull me back.
You gotta pull you back.
Thank you.
So who you know.
Yes.
So of those that you knew, what side of town? What neighborhood?
8 Mile, Wyoming. When I was really little, 7 Mile in Losser.
Okay.
We lived actually over here too. We lived on Gladstone, Hazelwood. That was like in the 90s.
Okay. What neighborhood do you remember most just as a kid coming up? Like when you think of that neighborhood in the house?
I would say 7 Mile Losser.
7 Mile Losser.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 Mile Losser.
By the graveyard.
Well, I think Graveyard is over that way. I definitely think now Greater Grace when I think of like sort of that community. What was it like for you as a kid? And then also like it's those ditches of like Rouge, River and Park and all of that.
Have you been over there recently? I have just gone over there recently. Like my grandma used to live in Brightmoor, so we were going kind of through there for years until she walked on. And I was there last year, and it was just like, first of all, gorgeous. It's always been gorgeous. There's always been like creeks and stuff, and canopy of vines and everything growing in like the hood. It was also like drugs and all the other things too. But now it's like the greenway or something. It's like nature reclaiming, but also I was like kind of weird.
It's always been one of those communities, and Detroit has a couple communities like that where people will have like a creek in their backyard, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
So, what do you remember as a kid about that community?
So, well, that was when I was really young. So, and I feel like those are really formative years for me. I remember that neighborhood being full of kids on the block, riding my bike, learning how to be a little girl, just playing outside. We had a cherry tree in the backyard, like eating cherries off the tree. We had this like moss covered, vine covered, dilapidated garage, and with like an old fence behind it. Excuse me. And playing on the wall back there, and just kind of exploring because it's the city, but like you said, it's like full of parks and it's very green over there. So I just remember the tall trees, just especially when it was getting dark outside, these giant trees and just fun times. It was like still fun times, and I still had so much innocent there. My grandmother lived on 8 Mile, Wyoming, so we also were growing up there in the township.
Okay.
So like that was like full of friends, that was like a real stability. Like we still have that house in our family.
All right. So 8 Mile in Wyoming, as we know in the community on the Detroit side, we're so used to hearing about the Wall. So that's definitely the community of the Wall of like the actual, it was a structure for people that don't know. And it's known and claimed of where redlining did exist, like where you knew it's like, oh, you cannot be past there. That exists in that community.
There was like two of them. It was like coming in and then going out of it. So going north of 8 Mile, which I live 3 blocks north of 8 Mile. That's where grandma's house is on Raminville. And we lived like the next house over from that field where it was like, you would think it's construction. If you walked over there, you're like, oh, they're building something. I've never seen them build anything. I saw them move dirt perhaps. But on the other side, it was all white. Royal Oak Township was built by the GI Bill. That was where Black veterans could and were allowed to build their homes. And so they did. So my grandfather was one of those veterans from World War II who built his home there and married my grandmother and then raised my mom there. So that was, it was kind of like, it was good because we can use their address to go to school. That was like a really good thing. So in the beginning, we started going to Ferndale schools. But then when I was in the 4th grade, that's when we were just like in Detroit public schools and kind of back and forth. But that was it was a wild ride.
Okay, so Royal Oak Township has been uplifted before on this. I remember the interview with Algira Al-Ghali speaking so much about the community and what that means. And Royal Oak, how people kind of know it, is probably one of the more what would I say, affluent and like metropolitan suburbs of Oakland County in throughout the city of Detroit. But this township inside of Oakland County, right there, Royal Oak Township, is some Black families that have been over there for generations.
Yeah, generations. I mean, generations and generations. There's a lot of people that are related to each other, you know.
Mhm.
Big family presence there. It's
Yep.
like, you know, I grew up with a lot of those families, like really good people.
Yep. It's still like one of those communities where like definitely if you circle the block too many times late at night, people are gonna be like, hey, who is that? We
Oh
don't know you."
yeah. I mean, everyone knows each other.
Yes.
Yeah, we were like the only family not related, you know, but it was, I mean, my cousins and that's where a safe haven was. It was, you know, growing up, there were some houses we lived in where we didn't have anything. We didn't have nothing in the house, but we always had grandma's house to like fall back on. So, you know, I'm super grateful for them passing it forward to us as well. Because, you know, if anything, we have this beautiful home, and that was where, you know, they lived. My grandmother was an artist. She made her work there. That's where I grew up going.
So let's talk about your grandma's artistry. What form of artistry, what discipline, what mediums, what was she doing?
So both my grandmothers, my grandma Henrietta, who lived on the east side and in Brightmoor also, she was, I guess, a seamstress. She made, she basically took clothing, cut them up and made quilts out of them. So they were these like super cozy because they were your clothes. And then she put a sheet on the back. So it had like weight on it. So I watched her sewing. And then my grandmother in the township, she made so many things. She had a kiln in the basement. So pottery, dolls, sculptures. She was an illustrator. She did beadwork. She sold the works. Like I would see people come into the side of the house and like some woman pull up and give her some money, and then she's giving them like a doll she made, you know. And she made her work.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of that creativity that your grandma that was in the business of art. How did she learn? Was she self-taught? Did she go to school for this? What was the lessons?
It was passed down to my family. Yeah, so I come from a family of artists and artisans, storytellers, healers, and so it was passed down. So if you go up to, there's a couple different tribes. One of them is in Petoskey, and they have the government building that's up there. You can actually see a lot of my family's artwork throughout the archive. So my Aunt Mary, her studio is actually recreated right now in Grand Rapids at the museum there. She was a master bead worker, and she made the largest beadwork of the Last Supper in beads, and it's in the Guinness Book of World Records. So I come from a family. My great-grandfather was making things that were going to the Vatican.
Wait, before we even get to the Vatican story, because that sounds very interesting, break down a little bit more about the beadworking and the creativity, because the way you deliver that, I'm thinking like it's as if a visual picture of the Last Supper, but with a lot of different types of beads.
Yeah.
So beadworking, like, break that down for me as an artist.
Let me tell you about it. Beadworking. It's a really fun practice you could do on a loom, and you can buy one for pretty cheap. A loom is this instrument that holds a series of strings, and you basically set like 10 strings across. You think of like a guitar, the top of it, how they're pulled tight like that. And then the other way, you take another thread with beads, and there's a pattern you do, and you weave the beads through that back and forth.
All right. So when you're doing,
tighten it.
So when you're doing something like a Last Supper image, like, because I'm so used to watching an artist, like they'll sketch and then they may paint in something.
Yeah.
Like, so how do you even know how to connect all that? Like, in my mind, are you like, do you have to figure out how you tying all this stuff together before you even lay the beads?
Yeah, I think it just comes with practice from doing small works. Because that's why I like the small ones, because you basically have to understand your tools And there are different ways to pull it off. I don't know how she did that though. Like this is way before my time, but I have images of it where like it's like this wall. That's how big it is.
Wow.
And she's like up on it and you can see partially. So she started at the top coming down. And I'm thinking like her loom just had so many strings across. So instead of like a 8 one where you have a little choker or a bracelet, something thin, she just had something big. And it looked like one continuous piece, but I'm gonna figure it out because I have aspirations to become a great bead worker.
Because in my mind, I'm just thinking of the like my creative mind is thinking to myself like, the first thing logistically is like this is pre-Amazon, so I don't even know even if you had Amazon.
That many beads.
I'm like, I mean, how many beads do you know? It's like, okay, so
how many beads?
I want
a lot.
You know what I'm saying? I want Jesus's hair to be about 13 on the shoulders, and then he gonna be in the beige robe. So I probably need about 2,500 beige beads for that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
2,500 beads is not a lot. They're really small. They're like crazy. Like I started doing beadwork, which I grew up. I mean, beadwork. My family's a huge. Bead. They're like they eat up beadwork in my family, and I grew up watching it and just like avoiding it because it's just so tiny. And I was like, I don't really want anything to do with it. But I figured when I got older, and then I got older, and I actually was buying parts to beads for years. So at the powwows, if I go to a powwow, I'm like, I don't like show up late to the powwow, but I'm like, I'm gonna hit up their shop because I know they got beads. So they'll sell them in bulk. Sometimes, like I have a lot that are passed down. I just have a ton of beads. They were passed down to me, and then I buy. It's called a hank. So it's like a gang of beads on a string, and they're all strung. So you can make a pattern. You can kind of freestyle it. But I think for that, I'm sure she has some sketch. I mean, well, you don't need a sketch. You have like the actual image itself. And then she basically, I'm sure, just color matched. They come in a lot of different colors. I mean, now you can get them in like fluorescence and hot pink and stuff like that, which is really cool. But yeah, it looks great. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of her work that it's crazy because I'm like learning more and more. All I knew was my grandma was the artist. And then I became an artist when I was like 21 or 22. I was at a family reunion up north, and one of my uncles was like, "Oh, you're the artist?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah." I remember his face being like, "Yeah." And that gave me a lot of confidence actually because it's like you trying to find your way, and to get any support is just so important. So, and then now I know I'm looking at the archive, and my aunt Sheila, she's an author, amazing. She's a anthropologist and just an expert in all the information for not only our family but different tribes in Michigan. Like there's so many of them.
Okay. All right. So in this space, you're seeing artistry as a kid, and then at times you're already uplifting, and that can always be tough, like a transient, like moving, but you do have that center back at grandma's house. When do you start tapping more so into your artistry yourself? And what was your first expression really going beyond art class at school to, I really like this?
Yeah. Well, I love the way that art classes smelled when I was really little. Those are my first memories, like, because you didn't get art class every day. We got to like kind of often, maybe once a week. And I remember the smell of it, the smell of paper and glue and just dust and pencil shavings. So I just wanted to learn so much about all the materials, but I actually didn't study art until I was like older, until I went off, on my own. But I was around it all the time, so I was always getting feedback and criticism. It was like getting critiqued when you're like 9, but it was cool though because I listened to them. They're really good.
So if art wasn't where your passion was when you were younger, what was your thought process as far as what you would do, I guess, as they say, when you grow up?
I always, I mean, I thought I would be a musician perhaps, but certainly in the arts, I always wanted to make stuff. Like I think arts, I just like touching stuff and, manipulating. objects, energy, sound.
So let's talk about music. Music was something that you were thinking. What was your discipline? How did you approach that as a kid? What drew you into that artistry?
My grandmother gave me a violin when I was 10.
Okay.
And when we had music classes, Ferndale public schools were like popping for that stuff. They had everything. It was amazing. So my grandmother gave me a violin that my mom played, and that was it. I mean, I didn't really have a choice. I wanted to play the drums or the trumpet. I love jazz. And she's like, play violin. So I learned classical music, but I excelled at it, and it was really fun too. I do love the violin. So I studied that. I did Blue Lake, like all the quartets, competitions. So I thought that I would actually go into music. Yeah.
What do you think having that discipline of classical music as a child, playing with others in like an orchestra set, how did that make impacts on you right now in life?
I feel like a light bulb just went off in my head. I'm like, oh, I still work with a ton of people. I still am working with other creatives and visionaries and thinking up a project, thinking how we can make it happen, making it happen, and then reflecting. So that feels very much like, my approach to the violin. I mean, I was really good. Like I thought that I was going to go to Juilliard perhaps. I was really very serious about it. I've always been serious about my work. So I think, just being able to play well on your own and then being able to coordinate with a lot of people at once for bursts of time, because you're not together most of the time. Most of it's in your head. It's for me, like I wake up and I'm thinking about something creative that I have to do, or I'm trying to clear my head for that.
Okay. All right. So from there, now we get into like, I guess, growing up more so. So the music and violin, what else is happening as far as everything else in this space as you move closer to where does it become visual art?
I think the first pieces I made when I was a kid, probably 10, around the same time, I loved cartoons. I still do. It's my favorite art form, actually, animation, especially the old ones. The Pink
What do you
Panther,
consider? Oh, okay.
Like I grew up with Golden Age folk, so the ones that they watch, Mr. Magoo.
God damn, that is old.
No, I mean really old. The ones that are hard to watch.
It's like Rocky and Bullwinkle.
No, Rocky and Bullwinkle. Yeah, we watched all Yogi the Bear, Flintstones.
Okay.
Also like Bugs Bunny. That's my boy. Like the whole that whole gang of artwork that came with it. Superman.
Okay.
Everything. So I would draw characters, and then gaming. Like when Mario came out, Zelda, we were like a big Nintendo family. So my grandma gamed. She used to play. She said it was for us, but she played for hours when we were at school.
Wow, you may have been the only person, one of the very few people with a grandma that was gaming.
So cool. It was crazy. She was the best. She was the best. We always get whatever technology. And my grandfather always had like a camera, and document stuff. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're drawing that in sketches. Where do you transition, like I say, from like thinking musician to visual artist?
They weren't really separate. I think
it was always running concurrent.
Yeah, because I just grew up around art. So I would do things like, I have a really early memory of wanting to be a sculptor. And I was like, I wanted to make a unicorn out of a bar of soap, like zestfully clean. So I got the bar of soap and I got a knife and I'm like hacking away. And then my grandma comes up and she's like, no. She's like, no. Like stops me. And she's like, oh, you're holding the knife wrong. And then she gives me a paring knife. And then she showed me how to do it. And I was probably 9 or 10.
Okay.
And allowed me to kind of play around with tools. Not necessarily like sit down and do this thing, but just letting it be available. But I was really plugged into music. Like I had a private instructor. It was very like regimented. Practiced 3 times a day. It was very serious. I was also a swimmer too. I was an athlete. My dad worked for the city with the aquatics department, number 2, 3 in line. So we were always at the pools. We were over here at Williams Center. I swim there like twice a day.
Okay. All right. So with that, all of that, in my mind, like I say, I meet you as visual artists. That's why I'm saying, when do the opportunities start presenting themselves where it's like, okay, nah, this is the lane I want to go to?
Yeah, I was like 19. That's when I really was, I think that's when I thought about it being a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 19. What else is happening around 19? I'm guessing out of high school. You may be already traveling, but where are you at?
Yeah, I was traveling. That's the first time that I left independently. My grandmother had taken me on a trip when I was younger to London and to Egypt after my grandfather passed. She took me instead of not going. So I got to see the world early, which it gave me the bug to go and travel.
How old were you on that trip? I
was 14.
What stands out most about London, and then what stands out most about Egypt?
Well, the food was nasty. It was so
in London or Egypt?
In London.
Okay.
I remember the shock of the diet in my body not being able to handle like that change. And it was like boiled, like lots of boiled things. And I remember, okay, the food is wild coming from Detroit. I'm like, soul food, meat and potatoes, girl. And the second thing was actually the culture there was similar to here. So I hadn't been really out of Michigan before. I've been to California for family reunion a couple times, and we travel for swimming, so we would go to meets in DC or something, but we weren't like seeing DC. We went and swam and then came right back home. And I remember hearing I thought it was a basketball game going on, but it was actually soccer. So I was with my grandmother walking, and we hear these guys go over there, they're playing like football, and they're just like regular black dudes, and they were playing R. Kelly, and I was just like, oh, it's like regular over here.
That is, I definitely don't know how much Kales was at the pickup game, but there we go.
Either. No, but that was mad years ago. That was 14. This is like 98. You know, this is like 98 when he was like he was still gross, but people accepted it or didn't know so much. But I remember just the culture, because I lived over here at that time, like, and I remember on the radio here, like playing the radio, like taping, like trying to tape the music, and going overseas and seeing the same culture translated it was super fascinating to me. It was like the regular mundane. Like that's what I love about traveling. Like go see stuff, but go to the store. Like, what are they selling? What kind of candy? Or just seeing how people live. The signs look a little different. Egypt was like way out of my element. Beautiful, of course. Like, a lot of black people there, which I was like, oh, they don't show y'all on TV. And we went to the pyramids, and my grandmother went inside, but I was like, no, I'm good. But so I waited outside for her, and that was like the first time I feel like I was trusted, because she didn't make me go in with her. She didn't treat me like a child. I sat there and I waited, and I remember having moments looking around and being all deep, for sure. And so when I was 19, I still was like, I don't know. I just knew that I had to get out of Detroit.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it was, for me, like, really life or death. And my best option was to expand and then like go see something.
What were those stressors that you could open up about just a little bit that had you at a point where you felt like a lot of just more than just regular quality of life, but like life itself exists beyond staying here?
I don't think that if I stayed, I would be alive. Like, I was super depressed, like dealing with, family issues. I had an incarcerated parent, trying to also be a decent person in the city when there's so many traps that can get you really caught up. And, I also had independence, and I was smart, and I had a job, and, I don't get in trouble or do anything like that. But I just needed to expand. I can't explain what it is. I don't even know what it was, but I figured actually, I love traveling. Like, that was the thing that it made me really happy at that time. Like, I was like super depressed. Like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, it was crazy. Like, thinking now, 25 years later, being on the other side of it and people are like, oh, it gets better. Like, it does get better. Like, it does, but you got to keep going and not get caught up.
And that's where I was going to ask for a person, what were those things that help reshape and motivate you through the challenge of what was on your shoulders at the time?
Art was a thing. Visual art. That's when I really started painting. And I remember I was watching The Real World, Hawaii, and one of the women there got into a fight with someone, and she was like had an alcohol problem. And then she went as part of her therapy to get some canvases, and then she painted. And I didn't really think about that you could like buy canvases. And so I was like, oh, okay. I went to Utrecht. I had an apartment downtown. I lived above Nikki's. I had like a little loft with just a bed in it and a TV, and I went and bought some art supplies. So that's all I had was, a packet of probably like 10 by 10 canvases, a set of acrylics, some brushes, and a palette. And then I started painting, and that was, I mean, having an incarcerated parent is wild. Like from when I was 10 to 18. So it was like we were okay. We moved around a lot, but those were out of necessity and survival. And so when I moved out of when I went and got a job, I like left high school. I was like, there's nothing else for me. I realized that. And we also grew up in a very I guess like household that really thirst for knowledge. So we had this crazy library. So we're like always reading. We always have vocabulary words. We're learning skill sets, gardening, the arts. And so I still had that discipline of like swimming every day, like we were like training for the Olympics. Like we were everything I've done and that my parents and my grandparents, made me do really set me up for survival. And so I just couldn't see it here. I tried to be a stripper once for like a day. I lasted like 3 hours. I talked politics with this dude. It was like I was standing there in combat boots. Like I don't have nothing. Yeah, but it was like I tried it. And so I knew then I was like, okay, you gotta like do something, girl. You can't be out here like by the airport.
It's like I'm not trying to hear these geopolitical conversations.
I know my titties are out, and I'm just like, yeah, what about Al Gore? I was like, I'm not built for this, but them girls were getting it though. I was so like, wow, they're really good at it, and I just knew that I had to figure out something that was going to set me up. And so
that's where you said, well, let's travel. And where do you travel to first?
So the first place I went was to Italy with my old best friend Kiana. And she was at U of M and she did one semester in Italian. So she's like, we should go to Italy. I'm like, yeah, we should go.
Okay.
And so we went and we were there for a few months. Like,
and when you're there, are you still painting?
I was doing a lot of illustration. So I bought, and I always loved graffiti. So I was like tagging, like Sharpies at Majestic and stuff like that, at like hip hop shows. But I just had my notebook. I have one now. I just like sketch. I love ballpoint pens. That's probably my favorite art form or medium to work with because you could just find it anywhere you go. And so, we were like, let's go to Italy. And I was so young. I was working at Pizza Popolis. I was working at, I don't know, Burt's or something, or Baker's. I worked at like all those clubs. So I saved up like a few $1,000. It was not enough money to go.
Yeah, I
bought a ticket and went. But it was really cheap back then. This is in like 2002, 2001, 2002. So the dollar stretched really far against the lira, and that's when they were actually changing to the euro over there as well. So our dollars went pretty far. We got some interesting living situations that were okay, but when I was there, that's when I was just drawing every day. And I didn't really think about it. I just was kind of like...
You just kept... That was the thing that kept you going.
Yeah.
So from Italy, where do you go?
From Italy, I came back home. I literally was like,
okay,
what do you want to do for your life?
So you here, and then where do you go from there?
So when I was there, I remember seeing graffiti, and I remember like, oh, like street art is everywhere. I didn't even think of it. It was like being in London and seeing Black people playing soccer at that time. It was just,
you didn't notice it until you came back, and now it's like you see a new vision of where you were.
Some of it there, but I was doing a lot of the like wild style drawn characters, lots of like Peanuts characters with like emo sayings from Guerrilla songs and stuff like that. And on my flight back, this woman asked me if I was an artist, and that's the first time I remember being like, yeah. She saw my notebook, and when I came back, did my GED, went to OCC, and then I scored excellently, got offers to go to Atlanta College of Art. My grandma took me down there to go check it out. And then I just wanted to be in Michigan because it's,
home
water, the water too. And I was like, I should stay here like a little longer. I was able to use the Michigan Indian tuition waiver at that point. So I was able to that's when I started studying art. That's when I was really like taking oil painting, acrylics, everything. But even to get into that, I studied with Donald Calloway. He was a mentor for me. So he's the one that gave me my foundation.
So let me say this. Shout out to Mr. Calloway. One hell of an artist, really from the community, in the community, seen a lot of his works. I don't even necessarily know if Mr. Calloway knows that I've observed so much of his work over time, and really just in community offering artistry. Very approachable. He's definitely somebody I need to get on Detroit is Different eventually, but one hell of a visual artist and very well respected, but somebody that offers that sense of like really telling stories in different disciplines and different styles of art throughout Black communities. I love that.
He taught me so much. I think, I've learned from mentors along the way. Like I've studied, I've like got a degree at the New School in Parsons. I was at the Art Students League working under artists as an apprentice for years. But Donald, when I met him, I lived above Nikki's. He was my neighbor and he had the gallery. And I would go over there, and it was just so amazing. He's doing all this, just so much stuff, so many things. He's like making these objects. And I told him, I want to be an artist. Will you show me? He was like, no. I was like, oh. And so I said, oh, can I pay you? I'm like really serious. So I paid him like $20 a week or something. And he helped me get my portfolio together. He also gave me a really great lesson once. I was like making a piece that was like reminiscent of his work. And he was like, don't you ever, I'll never want to see you doing my work out here. And I was like kind of shocked, but it taught me like, oh, no. There's actually you could be a good artist and have the technical skill, but like, what are you saying? Like, how do you develop it? And it really gave me the vision, the tools to go and find out what that actually is. So I really respect him.
Okay. All right. So these different journeys, as you are taking more so like that academic approach, but you also got the lessons from family. Can you differentiate I guess what you pick up from like a tradition and what's passed down from family and artistry versus more so like the formal education? How did that hit you differently?
It was cool. I loved being able to study art. It was harder because I wasn't used to the critiques. I was used to making my work and then getting a critique from someone I really respect, one of my family members, my grandmother. But the access, that was wild. Like, excuse me, especially going to the New School where...
What's the New School?
That's Parsons. That's like the Project Runway School. And it's a wonderful school. It's a private university in New York City, right in Manhattan. And they have excellent arts programs, very expensive. And I was able to, get my degree there. The difference was when I was at the Art Students League, it was independent school. So you're learning from a master artist, but mostly with the technicians. The artist might be there like every Monday. The tech is there every day. So you had a lot of freedom to like explore materials, but you had to pay for them. When you're at Parsons, everything is included. So when you go into the welding, studio, the shop, everything you want is right there. Every machine you want. So I had never experienced that. That was amazing. And I also was able to like hustle my way into the program because I transferred in. I didn't do the 4-year studio program with those students, so I didn't have a studio. I was able to use a studio because some of them barely used them, And but the access was absolutely amazing.
So with all this access to all these different materials and mediums and styles, and I'm guessing just artists themselves, what was your thought process as far as the stories you would tell in the art that you would create just at that moment in time?
I didn't even, I was so, I was really young. I was like 28 by the time I went back to college.
Mm-hmm.
And I traveled in between. I was living in Europe for years off and on. I didn't really develop it there. Like there wasn't, for me, the place to develop my voice in my work necessarily because I was working full time too. So perhaps if like I had a parent that was like giving me the full ride experience and I didn't have to pay, rent and all these things, it might have been different. I might have had the mental capacity to actually think through. But I really got the technical aspect of a lot of what I'm doing now. So, like we had audio labs, we had like every computer, every printer. So the work that I'm doing now, I have the technical skill set because I was working in that school in particular. I developed more of my voice at the Art Students League, that the independent school, because you don't have to show up. Like you don't have to be there. It's cheap. You don't have to show up. You can show up and do everything though. And the people that are there are very passionate. So many of the masters have gone through there. But I think just kind of after that, it was really actually crazy because we were actually trained to talk about our artwork. Like they're like, oh, what does this piece mean to you? And I would try to like come up with what it meant to me. But to me at that point, I literally would be like, oh, I don't know. I just finished work. Like this thing is still kind of wet. I don't have necessarily, like I didn't want to just make up a story about it. Like I really wanted to explore what that was. And so I think I found a lot of that through reading and literature, and then really looking at archival images. I would go to like the library and start to just look at pictures. And then I kind of looked back after maybe a decade and I had a body of work. And then I was like, oh, okay, these are the things that I'm actually
saying.
Yeah, and like exploring.
So let's get into that. And that's kind of where we at right now. What were the things that you were saying then? And this is a little bit more of the psychology of it all.
Love it.
Why do you think that was the message that you were conveying at that time?
I think, well, a lot is aesthetics. A lot is, I was documenting a lot. So while I was traveling, like I didn't have any money. I would travel on a shoestring. I would wait tables here, or like I was a bartender. I was a bad waitress, but I would wait tables.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, I would forget everything you asked me for, period. Like,
hilarious.
Please.
You were pre-Yelp review.
I just didn't do it. I was a bartender. It was fine. I was a great bartender. And so I would like basically make enough money to go, and then I would go and make art and explore a little bit. But I was always like waiting. I was always like waiting for a bus, waiting for a train, waiting for a flight, waiting a lot of buses because I had no money. So I was like waiting on buses and going to banks to take their pens and their paper pads because you could always find ballpoint everywhere. And I would kind of draw what I saw, the women around me. And so it kind of became a log of like fashion and aesthetics and the way that they dressed. And like I loved, like I'm in India and I'm like, everyone wears a red lip. Doesn't matter where you go. That girlies are gonna have on a red lip. And if you go get your nails done, which I'm like, that's the first thing I always do. No, anywhere I've ever been, pull up to the nail salon, go get a little paint. You don't got to get the full manicure. Just get like interact with women. And I started to put that into my work, and as a way to kind of remember it too. But I didn't realize it until like much later, and then by that time, I was, really exploring spirituality, Native American, old religion, kind of like little treasure pieces my grandmother left for me and my sisters. And then it became part of my spiritual practice. But it's like a log. It's like when I was in India, everyone was wearing hot pink. It was like the color of the season in the mountains. I'm talking about like 4 hours into the Himalayas. Everyone was wearing hot pink and teal. It was like this, I don't know if it's the fabric. So I was studying like the textiles. That's actually why I was going to those places too, really to observe their religious practices, observe their temples, and try to have some context into what it was I was taking, because I was taking some of these images for my artwork, for instance, the third eye, like, which is a very old symbol. You see it in so many cultures, but I was like using like just that imagery, and I wanted to kind of just see it in context and kind of be a part of it, meet people there, and it just became like this living log, and like, how do you take a goddess and then what would she wear? Like, what would she wear in Detroit right now if she was here? Like, she might have like some jewels on her teeth, and she probably have her hair like really colorful and like a natural style, but she might not be wearing clothes, and she might just be like completely hot pink because she's a goddess still,
Okay. And as you're pulling those inspirations and you still kind of have more of this growth in just like kind of retrospect, how does that impact where you are today? Like, as far as like your art expressions now, what you look at when you create now, how does that frame it? Which I know this is years later, but how does that frame where you at?
I mean, thank you. That's a great question. I think it feels like I'm having a conversation, like time is collapsing, perhaps, like, because I actually look at a lot of my old work now, and I'm part of an exhibition here at the DIA later this year. They have a Indigenous American exhibition, and I've been really welcomed by that community, which I'm very grateful for. And they're actually taking one of my old pieces, an old sculpture that I created out of resin in probably 2012, and that piece was my attempt to collaborate with my grandmother, who left me whatever I wanted from her studio, including like a lot of needles, because she worked with, needles all the time. And so I took some of those needles and then I cast them. I took not only the needles, but like a lot of stuff was sharp. But unfinished work, I took like just some beads, like a couple of the hanks of beads, and then I cast them into a figure that I made out of bronze, which I love repetition. So I took the bronze piece and then I made a mold that can be replicated in different materials. So one was a clear resin, like plastic. So when you look through the piece, you can see straight through her. She's a Venus. So it's a very old, very, very old image of the Venus, the mother of Mother Earth, the grandmother. She's like very full body, like nourishing. And so I took my grandmother's work and put it in that. So it's like, it's a conversation across generations that I'm creating with these works. So I'm making them, and I have like 6 now that I'll probably keep 3, and I'm being really choosy who I sell the other 3 to, because it's important that it's within like our family, or someone that will respect the legacy, and then will have rights to buy it back and then also have it on loan, but I think I'm like playful. I still love cartoons and stuff too. So when you look at the work, they're still like really colorful and playful, and they might be sharing like a peace pipe. I show my sisters or people, women that I know, women that are inspiring to me, or maybe they have like, there's some aspect of one and an aspect of another, and I'm just making them for now. Like, I want them kind of reflect now and for later,
So with that, what's been the reception of so many of these pieces? Because I've seen your work originally on the Riverwise magazine cover. I remember, shout out to Megan for hooking that up. And it's different artists that are always offering pieces to Riverwise. But I remember your cover specifically, where I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I remember that standing out just in my mind. But what's been the reception of a lot of the goddess pieces and you in the honoring of now I have a better understanding as you've given that whole contextual story of this intergenerational relationship, really, because it's a lot into your story and that artistry that was always there with your grandmother pouring in both of them as you speak of, and you seeing it around you and it pouring into you. What has been the reception of it?
It's been amazing. I didn't think much of it in the beginning just because I didn't it's like crazy. I didn't think about being an artist by trade necessarily. I thought I'd be a musician or an athlete. So I am over the moon. It feels like a dream. It feels like a dream. People I've seen people have very emotional responses to my work. People from all backgrounds. That piece in particular I created about 5 years ago after George Floyd was killed. New York City shut down. There were protests every day. You probably saw like a protest. There were probably like 12, 15 protests every day, some small, some large. And there was a call to action for artists to come out and paint on the plywood boards. And once the plywood boards went up, to me, it reminded me of growing up in Detroit and seeing houses abandoned, seeing buildings, businesses abandoned, how those plywood boards didn't come right back down. When everything was boarded up in New York, I really panicked. I was just like kind of panic painting, but I was upstate, up north of New York. So I was up north and I get a phone call to come and there's artists showing up in Soho to come paint on the plywood. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I'm thinking like the wall or something. And I get down there and there's hundreds of paintings all along the Broadway corridor, all around the whole neighborhood. I got there at a Sunday morning. I didn't see anybody. And then by like noon, there were hundreds of artists out, like all ages, painting and making chalk drawings and, playing music. And there was this like community. So the first piece that I made is Imani that I was was like, wow, it took a whole pandemic for me to get on Broadway. Finally here. And I was like, what am I going to say? The only thing that they had was yellow paint. That's why it's yellow, because all the stores were closed. We didn't have access to our studios or anything. Someone got donated paint, so I painted it yellow. And then I thought about Imani Mixon, a journalist. She's a visionary artist here from Detroit. And I was like, she's such an intelligent woman and visionary. And I thought that was a perfect person to represent us and represent Detroit, represent women, the powerful goddess. And she's like very young. And so that's what I put up there first. So, which actually I'm not in possession of it. Someone stole it from me. There was like a whole thing with this, like, I don't know to me. I'm like, they're like mafia. I don't know who they are. Were following me around, stealing my work off the walls.
Wow.
And that was the first one. So, it's an honor that it lives, it's still street art too. It's like, that people receive it this way. So that led to so many more opportunities, but mostly I was just guerrilla style, just painting with my friends. And, but I saw people reacted to the image of a Black woman. And it was like, also like an image of a Black woman that was like this expressionistic character done over and over again and kind of, like different colors, but the repetition of it, like, you can see her in many different ways because it's the same few characters. And I saw people crying in front of them. Like I saw a man on a business meeting. He was very business, so serious. This older white guy, he just like dropped the phone on his side, on the ground. But he stood there for like 2 minutes and I'm talking to this journalist and we're watching it happen. And so it's bigger than me. I am a vessel for creating the work. I like doing it. But it feels like almost like an obsession or something.
Okay.
More than I like it.
So in this same space, as you talk about so much of this artistry and bringing that to life, potluck brought you back this time. And that's kind of where I've seen, like, as I said, drenched in paint and everything, expression, all ages connecting. Where did that come from? What was the connection? How do you go about it? And
potluck. That is so crazy because potluck is literally just the culmination of so many geniuses together, basically. And after working in New York, and I built artist residency, the Soho Renaissance Factory collective, and having many successes, getting spaces for artists, and they're all working artists now. It's like amazing. All of them are like working, fair paid art jobs, which is wonderful. Some have written books and all this stuff from working alongside me, and me working with them as well. They helped me to get to this point. I lost my train of thought.
I was just saying the potluck. How did that come about?
So after all of that work in New York, I burned out, of course. Juanita Reynolds, my younger sister's best friend, was killed. And our family just just such a dark time. And it was right in the pandemic. Juanita was really wonderful. She started her own program, a nonprofit called We Feed Our First, which we hosted at the potluck before, where she was feeding people, basically getting food and bringing it to elders that were left alone during the pandemic. So when Juanita walked on, we basically, I burned out really hard. And the only thing I came to was Michigan. I was like, I had a successful pop-up at Union Square. I could not even show up anymore. And I'm like, let me go home, go see the family. And I came here. I brought my truck. I made it into a camper. And then I basically just started camping in Michigan, trying to clear my head. And the only thing that I did on that trip was go to Talking Doll Studio. And I saw Wes Taylor. And he says, how could we get you to do something here? So I'm like, okay. And I told him, let me think about it, because I was really burned out. And I just don't think it's interesting for me at that point to come and just be like, look at my work. I just wasn't in that. That's not my vibe. I love that too. I love when I have a gallery show. I love them. It's such an honor. I've shown in many places and have solo shows. But it just felt like, in the spirit of why, when I left, I didn't want to leave. I was really scared. It's makes me want to cry. I did not want to leave. And it was also everyone was getting so popping. Everyone was finishing college, and my friends in the hip hop scene, and Invincible, everyone it's Northern Lights, Buddha Lounge. And I was I have to go though. But I was I'm going to go and learn as much as I can. I'm going to learn everything I can. I'm going to bring it back home.
So potluck was about bringing it back home?
Yep. And I literally went to the woods, and I was walking around the woods, and I'm my sister Kendra, my homegirl, is my bestie. She put together her program for cleansing the body. And so I did a detox. I stopped drinking. And then I just went to the woods, and I was I'm going to empty my head out, because I want to do something in Detroit, but I don't want to just I needed to feel really good and interactive. And I thought about, I was oh, the potlucks are black as fuck. Let's do the potluck. So, yeah, that was really the idea, was to not only, of course, food, yes, but to have something that we can all bring music, Kendra folding in her whole healing empire. And then also reconnecting with Talking Dolls, offering something to the neighborhood, trying to get really hyper local, get some of those people, some of those genius kids that are tucked right back there into the space, meeting people like yourself, figuring out what I can do, how can I help? I'm looking at you dead in your eyes. What is it? What are some of the things that I can do to add back to the city? Because I also, when I left, I'm aware, my friends were they're not leaving. And I was yeah, we need brain power here. And so many geniuses stay, and I'm just so grateful for that. My sister stayed too. It's don't go to Atlanta, I just needed to go see the world, and I did that.
And I'm glad that you have that offering, which every week it's a lot of waves of things happening around movement, but that's something that's very organic for a neighborhood. If people don't know where Talking Dolls is, you go I'm West Davidson, East Davidson, right there at the tip. right in the community. Love what Wes and the brothers over there are doing with Talking Dials, and then even expanding what artistry can be in community and creating community, even giving space for like Sterling to pontificate and wax poetically about his music creations.
Yep, that's right.
And so much more. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you too. It's a dream, and I think it started out really small. And it was, we built it around Juanita's family. We were like, we have to like build a cocoon of love around her sisters, her mother, her daughter, who are all artists, and my family. She was in New York with us when we were painting. Like Juanita was on the phone with my sister every day. My sister, she lives with me now. We actually like came together closer as a family.
That's
like
good.
like we should live together. Why are we both in New York City out here like hustling? Like let's live together easily. I got a like nice place on the water. It's old and small, but it's safe, And basically this year, the potluck, we had 34 artists. We pay all the artists.
Cool.
That was like, oh my God, that was like such a goal because the first year was definitely like, we're all like donating our time to make this thing. But now I'm like, no, we have to like eat. Like we got to make sure that the artists are or can create something without thinking about it, And I started my own school called Kinegokeshek Fine Art Workshop in New York. And so I'm looking forward to bringing some of that here. It's an apprenticeship program. And then I have some young students as well, but I teach them the ins and outs of how to be an artist, and I give them studio space to create. But that's an extension, I think, of the potluck. The potluck, we have there were workshops and just kind of all these independent things. And I mentioned to you earlier, before we started rolling, that it feels like it almost isn't ours anymore. Like it's ours, but now it's like the greater ours.
That's dope.
And that's a wonderful feeling. I didn't know so many people there. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
A part of the community. And that's always the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That's always the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So with it, you knocked out the 3 C's that I love most: culture, creativity, community.
Thank you.
Most definitely. So as we get to a close, we got to hit you with the classic questions.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely let me know when that exhibit goes, because I'm sure people want to see it. When I put up the reels, I'll put up some of the images so people can see some of this stuff. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Classic Detroit is different question. First.
Yeah.
Very first car, year, make, and model.
My first car was my first car was a Ford Taurus. It was a 2001, but it was really my mama car.
Hey, there you go. You go. All the kids that get their parent ride.
Yeah. Okay. Be like, can I take you to the store?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Where's the first place you went when you got it?
Oh God, I think I went to Taco Bell.
Oh man, the border.
Yeah.
The border.
The tacos are like 29 cents back then.
Oh man, I was a Taco Bell former employee as well. So yes, it's yes. Them Taco Bell days.
Also, my dad used to have me help drive to like DC when I was like 12. So I'm like,
okay, all right.
It was really my dad's car, but
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, and next question. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. You get to pick 2 songs, Woodward and Jefferson. What songs you picking?
Oh my God, I'm playing Dilla. I'll probably play something I love like champion sounds. I think I would play is it New York to LA? Filthy McNasty, the name of the song?
Let's rock and roll with it.
Yeah.
All right. And last question. If you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why?
Woodward? After one Detroiter? Ooh. I think I would name it after Bert from Bert's.
Mr. Deering. Mr.
He
Deering.
gave me jobs and stuff. He gave me jobs. And when I worked for him before I moved to New York, and he always, like, I taught myself piano at his bar. And when I left, I was like, he finally was like, gonna let me open on Sundays or something, like, give me the code to get in. So I was like, oh, he trusts me, But I'm leaving like 2 weeks later. So I went to get my 2 weeks. And I was like, Bert, I'm about to move to New York. And he was like, well, you can go or you can stay here and work for me forever. And I was like, nice. I gotta go.
Mr. Deering. Yeah. Shout out to Mr. Deering so much. As I've uplifted a couple of stories, that's another person that I know he wouldn't even come in here. But But OG, and as I always say, I look up to people in business for how long you can be in business. And he's one of those people that has been in business for a long time, giving a lot of people access to stages and places and doing events, but also, you know what I'm saying, showing up old school Black business.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Bert gonna be one of them people where like, yeah, it ain't gonna be no, we'll handle this later. You gonna be counting out that money at the end of the night.
Oh, when he trusted me, I was like, oh, I have cracked the code because
hilarious.
I'm telling you, I was like, oh no, he trusts me. He gave me the code. I'm about to leave. It took me like 2 years, you know.
I know. Oh, Bert's old school.
No,
Bert's
they weren't
old
playing.
school.
He also, I love what they've done over there. It's I mean, I've watched it happen over 20 years. I left 20 years ago. So it's like, it's beautiful.
And also,
love to see it.
Family institution, Jay Lee,
Yep.
younger Bert, like it's seeing that Black business, as people talk about legacy, tradition. Right. We don't think oftentimes that, but I can tell you this, every Thursday night, it's an institution.
Yeah.
It's an institution.
Well, I should go Thursday. I used to work Thursday nights.
Oh man.
Oh my God, I was a mess. I would be like having a Newport hanging out my mouth, like talking mess with
that is a place where that happens. Blues and jazz and them singers, you know, so we love it.
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Detroit is different. Peace.
Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different. Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different, fan. Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different, man. White Bay.